Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today at Secure Families Initiative.
Hi. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from, or good evening if you're abroad. We'll give folks maybe 30 seconds to join, and then we'll get started with the program.
Yay. So happy y'all can be a part of this day. This is our I want to say it's our fourth annual kickoff of our Voter Ambassador Program, Maria.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Oh my gosh. It's exciting.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. So, welcome everyone, whether you're tuning in live or in the recording, welcome. We are so happy to have you here. My name is Maria Campbell, and I am the Voting Ambassador Program Organizer with Secure Families Initiative. I am so glad you're here. So for the next 30, 45 minutes or so, we are going to hear a story that spans generations. So from the halls of the Freedmen's Bureau from the Civil War to the work that we're doing right now to make sure that every military family can vote. First, I'll start off by introducing our organizing director, Brandy Jones, who really spearheaded the development of the Voting Ambassador Program. And then we'll introduce our special guest for today, Ms. True Lewis. And then from there, I'll talk about what the Voting Ambassador Program is, how to get involved, and how to stay connected. So with that, I'll go ahead and start by saying that this program exists, like all of SFI, because of a vision. And I want to start by bringing in the person who was behind that vision. So please welcome the organizing director of Secure Families Initiative, Ms. Brandy Jones.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Maria, for the introduction. I'm so grateful to have you on our team, and I can't wait to hear from you, Mrs. Lewis. I just want to say this is such an honor, again, to just have everyone participating in this program. For me, just thinking about when I first kind of developed the Voting Ambassador Program and wanting to kind of encapsulate what I was seeing when we were on the ground hosting voter registration drives at Secure Families Initiative. So I will introduce myself first and go right into that story. I'm Brandy Jones. I'm the organizing director here at Secure Families Initiative. I've been a military spouse for the last 2 decades. I've enjoyed volunteering in our community, working with Secure Families Initiative, and being a mom of kids, raising them through this military life. We're now in college. We've moved more times than I can count. And this is why this is a real issue that faces our family. We've had several different addresses, but maintain residency for voting purposes in different locations all across the country. So this is really near and dear to my heart. And so just thinking about when we hosted our first voter registration drive, we were at our local restaurant in Virginia, and it was kind of like all volunteer military spouses involved, and we were signing and registering people up left and right. And one thing that stuck with me at that time was that we were able to register an active duty military member who was of enslavement ancestry, and that was his first time ever registering to vote. And so for me, I just did not want to let that go. And it just was like a special moment to think of how many other people are in our community that are not registered to vote. And knowing that all of these policy decisions impact us directly as military families and service members. So thinking about that and kind of thinking a little bit about my own history, not only do I have a grandfather who fought in the American Revolution, in the founding of our country, I also have members of my family who fought in the Union. And during that time, were then kind of placed into the Freedmen's Bureau papers. So maybe some of you aren't familiar with that, but it's a list of documentation of after the Civil War was over, people from enslavement ancestry, like my ancestors, were then escaping that horrible situation that they had just endured for hundreds of years of enslavement. And the Union Army set up posts all over the United States in different places. So once those members found them escaping that, they had a place to run to, and that was the Freedmen's Bureau. and it was run by our Union Army members, and it was a place to document the names of the people. At that time, for me, my grandmother, her name was Kitty Brooks. She was found to have nothing but tattered clothes and a scar on her face. And she was in the Freeman Bureau looking for her siblings. They were all listed by name because if you can imagine, during this time, people were scattered everywhere. People were sold to different plantations all over the country. And so there was no way to keep track of your family. This is the beginning of our human trafficking that we talk about here currently in our country. So knowing that that was my ancestors' lived experience, and that at that time when they were seeking that freedom, the Freedmen's Bureau was there. They were able to help people from that situation find like equitable employment, helping them with contracts, helping register them to vote. So like when we think about the origin of voter registrar, we have to start there. And so I'm just really thinking, as we launch our Voter Ambassador program for the fourth time, it's very much an exciting moment and a personal moment for me, because I like to think that as military families, we have always been instrumental in making sure that equality happens and the right to vote is protected. So I, again, thank you all for tuning in, and I'm excited for y'all to learn more. And so at this time, I want to introduce our amazing guest, Mrs. True Lewis. She has an amazing story to share with you all, in the hopes that this really inspires you to take your place in the American story. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Hi.
you. Hi.
Thank you so much for that. So for this portion, we're going to go ahead and have a dialogue and conversation with Miss True Lewis. I know that she has a wealth of stories and experiences and connections that we want to make sure we get out in this next few minutes. And so we have some questions for you. Okay, so I guess we'll start off by saying thank you for being here. One, can you start by sharing what it means to you to serve and how your family's legacy of military service has shaped your sense of civic duty and identity? And I ask this question because we know that you are 4 generations of firstborn service members. And so really the idea of civic duty and military service is in your blood, essentially. So with that, yeah, can you tell us more about how that experience has shaped your identity and your civic duty?
Yes, I'll try to remember that question as I go along, but I do want to thank you and Brandy for having me. That first part of your question, I just think that service, it's something bigger and larger than myself and my family. Like you said, I have 4 generations of firstborn serving. And it was just not always about, our uniform or other things that you think. It was really a responsibility, especially for me, because I'm the third one. My son will be the fourth. And that service, like I said, it's just bigger than your personal life. And when you come from these generations of military service, I was raised to understand, that our citizenship was just not passive. It's asking something of you, right? It's always requiring sacrifice, discipline, and just a willingness to just carry a responsibility. My parents were always, you have to work 10 times as hard, be good, don't get in trouble. This was all part of, my family teaching me and what that actually means to me, because I seen this every day with people around me, my dad, my neighbors, my family, and even down to the women in the church basement that would cook those Sunday dinners during the service and everything. I learned and was listening to how they talked about, their civic duty and all kinds of things that go on in our lives. I learned that a lot from those ladies in aprons and slippers. So you get to see all that in real time. And for me, it really did teach me discipline, perseverance, those are the two main things that, that teaches me. And it's also about, taught me about honesty. So not only did my family just serve this nation, even though it didn't fully honor their citizenship and return in some certain situations with the first two generations of military for my family, but patriotism means a lot of different things for different people. But patriotism isn't a shallow word or something that you just throw around. For me, it's just rooted in pride and truth. And I carry that as a veteran, as a family historian. This is going back years in my family. So my love for this country is not blind. It's just willing to stand in the gap and protect what matters and just keep pushing this nation to live up to its highest ideals. Maria?
Thanks. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'll have to remember the mute button. But thank you for that. So one thing that you noted was that there, the two generations ahead of you. Can you help orient us a little bit by telling us what I guess conflicts were they a part of during that time?
Right. So my grandfather, who is legally my grandfather biologically, and he happened to him and my grandmother adopted me when I was a few days old because my dad was in Vietnam and my mother's German, and I was born, I'm a part of the loving generation, that the children that were born in the 60s, where we just, all this conflict and turmoil was going on in the country. But when I was saying that the first two generations is because he's a colored troop in the 40s, serving in Normandy on D-Day +2 on Utah Beach. And his firstborn, which is my birth father, he served in Vietnam. And my dad also served, 20 years in the United States Marine Corps. He went on to do a lot of things. He was a drill sergeant. And we still tease him to this day and call him Gunny Lewis. And then it was me, I served during the 90s, and I've probably been on every continent, I think, but two. And my service, I took that very seriously, even though we weren't in too many conflicts. But then I gave the Army my firstborn child. He served in Balad, Iraq. Eddie's also air assault. So he went to Afghanistan with the 101st Airborne, the Screaming Eagles. So all of our service was honorable. It's humbling. It's quiet service. I don't think if you looked at us, you would know unless someone really kind of asked, but it was always something that I don't know. I can't speak for my son, but I think I know. But for me, it was just, I already saw two examples of what happened and how my dad served in the 60s, but he wasn't getting his full citizenship even during that time. Racism and bigotry and all kinds of other things were still not accessible to him, but he's over there fighting in Vietnam. And it was the same thing I learned from my dad, my grandfather. I truly believe in my heart that when he went there to Germany and, all these other little countries in between, he saw what happened over there. He's seen everything, and it opened up a world to him, of course, but he wasn't going to be able to fully get that when he got back if he thought he lived, which he did. But my dad took a lot of advantages of that, even though he didn't get the GI Bill and other things that his counterparts, the other white soldiers, were getting. My dad found a way a lot of times to navigate, and that's why me and my siblings and all of us are where we are in life, because when my dad saw a window, he poked it and got in there, even though a lot of times these laws and just the way our lives were, he always found the way. My brother's, a graduate of Penn State. We've all had the best education. He's put us in places that weren't normal. And I used to always question too about, well, why did Daddy, go? This goes back to what I was saying about how he saw what was going on in Europe. Why didn't we stay where he was born and raised in Alabama, but certain parts, people in my family did stay? But that is all part of Daddy's journey of he saw the potential and saw what could happen. And, that's why he was part of that great migration. We're all born in 5 different states. And I think all that had a part of it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. One, I'll just begin by saying that the Voting Ambassador Program, we talk a lot about carrying the legacy of the freedom fighters and those who fought for the right to vote for us. And you clearly are carrying the legacy of not just military service, but of being a good citizen and of being an embodiment of civic duty. So I know that your father would be very proud of that legacy that you are carrying forward, and then now that your son is carrying forward. So there's a couple things that you had said that I want to tease out a little bit more, because there's a lot. There's so much and so many different ways that we can take this. But one, you talked about how civic duty and service is not passive. And so this leads me to my next question. And one of the things I had the honor as the Voting Ambassador organizer is I got some reading materials as I started, and that was one to read this book, Neither Carpetbaggers Nor Scalawags.
Yes.
So thank you to the SFI leadership team for giving me this copy, an autographed copy nonetheless. So signed by Richard Bailey. But in this book, there was one particular line that really that made me think about what you said just reminded me of this line where an African-American minister, Lawrence S. Berry, told a crowd, "We are here tonight to tell the world that after being enfranchised, we are wise enough to know our rights and we are going to claim those rights." So I'll say that again. We are wise enough to know our rights and we are going to claim those rights. Civic duty is not passive. It's something we have to understand, and it's something we have to claim. It's happened since this era of the Reconstruction era after the Civil War, and it's something that we're trying to do here with the Voting Ambassador Program, is make sure that military families understand their rights and can claim those rights, regardless of how they vote. We just want to make sure they have that foundation. So with that, my next question is, one, how does that quote resonate with you? And many people who have fought for this country have also fought for the right to vote. How does that tension resonate with you? And what are the stories that may have passed down in your family?
Good. So, yeah, I love that quote there. And that again reflects on my family, about our journey, because my family's journey just reflects that nation's long struggle to live up to its promises, right? Mm-hmm. So, my family, like Brandy and a lot of others out there that are listening, even if you don't know, you'll find out that our story sits at the crossroads of America's founding, right? This is America's unfinished work, what you all are talking about here. So when I trace my roots back to the American Revolution, I'm not also just stepping away from that, or the Reconstruction, or the Freedmen's Bureau. I'm stepping deeper into that. That's what you all are here doing right now, right? Mm-hmm. These stories, ask the same question: who gets to claim the promises of America, and who has had the right to make those promises real? And that ties back into how I was saying that my family, who served this country, were 4 generations of firstborns. Those 2 generations had to face those barriers, and still had to come back and get their full citizenship here. And that is a lot of what I call, we have that contradiction. That is part of an African American's experience in this country. But we were willing to defend democracy abroad while still being denied access here. And I don't know, it just makes me think too about my cousin Aaron Sellers. in Bullitt County, Alabama. And this is a story that I knew about since 2003. And my dad, who was born in 1918, this is his first cousin, and they all know this history, and it's been taught down to generation, me to my son, even down to my baby Puddin'. She's 18 now, but we keep our history alive by teaching them in small ways and showing them. And they're always in this office, so they know what's going on with their lineage here. But he was denied the right to vote 6 times, and probably several more times. I think it was 6. And he was threatened, against his life, his property. And it just became so serious, at one point, that when the voting's right, it was like I forget what the full name of it, but it was like a civil rights commission. And one of the persons that was in charge of that commission that came to Montgomery, Alabama, was the president of Notre Dame at the time, Father Hesburgh. And I'm sure you all can, Google that up there. But my cousin Aaron, he had to be whisked away in the middle of the night because of all these threats, not being able to vote in his county. So what ended up happening, they were denied the right to vote. So these commissioners all, like I said, came back down to Alabama so that they could help them and figure out, they wanted to hear what was the problem here about voting and registering. And that story always stuck with us about, how he fought to just keep on going up there, even though they kept turning him back. And my family, we just keep that history going about what my cousin Aaron did. We just won't forget. And that's the reason that we get up and vote every time, not just in November, but all the way down to our grassroots, our county, and our city, because that's really where these young people eventually are going to have to start. Don't go bigger. And I also wanted to talk about my grandma Queen.
Yes.
That's a good story when it comes to about voting. She was born in the 1800s, and I knew her. I knew somebody born in the 1800s all the way up until I was 9. Like that, it still blows my mind that I'm an adult. And when I look back over her records, like I really knew a lady that was the daughter of an enslaved woman and an enslaved man. And back in Alabama, they had these things called a poll tax, where I can't think about it off the top of my head, but that was like one of the few ways you could vote if you were Black. And even if you got that poll tax, which was a lot of money back then, I think it was like maybe $5. I'm not sure the exact amount, but someone had to even just vouch for her and my Papa Sam's character just to even get in that situation. And it was still going on up until 1965. And that poll tax says so much in the details, because when she passed away in 1977, they stuck her obituary on top of that poll tax. And we hear about that in museums. I think we've seen programs here and there about, that poll tax. But those are like the systems that are built that are into voter suppression, that was not always like loud in appearance, like my cousin Aaron's story. So, that was made to humiliate. It's just humiliating, and it's personal, and it's just this, designed to make you feel like, your citizenship depends on someone else. So, like I said, my family, we still had to be fighting all the time, even, when it came to our families fighting back here on the home front, even if they weren't military. So those are like 2 things that stand out to me a lot.
Yes. Every time I talk to you, I feel like there is a new story that comes out. I know that Brandy would agree, that is that just colors your whole experience and your story.
It's it's there. It's always there, and I know a lot of other families have these stories as well. And they don't have to be your personal stories. These are people that you go to school with, who you work with, who you go to church with, you're in organizations with. These stories are here, they're real, and they have an effect. And that's why I feel like this program here is helping get that word out about why it's important just to you on that personal level, because those are things that didn't happen to me, but they're personal to me, right?
Oh my gosh. True. This is so amazing. I just want to pause this all and I want us to really reflect when you're speaking to this issue. Saying that you knew your ancestor and they were the child of enslaved Black Americans. I need people to hear that clearly. I need people to understand that. I need people to know that as much my experience as we are speaking as individual experiences, my great grandfather, also born in Alabama and also fled during the Great Migration. And he was born at the turn of the 19th century. And again, I sat on his lap as a little girl. I knew my grandpappy. And so
Yeah.
when we talk about that, it's important to really reflect that we are still here. We are the descendants of those who did not have this voice to speak in this way. And when we talk about voting, that is an individual right. And it's important that we think through our individual stories that led up to that, where we are now, our place in that story of voting rights and the fight for that right to vote. And I would also just say, my grandpappy was born as a person who was an indentured servant, because at that time his parents were enslaved. So that was the next generation's labeling. And so that was a horrible situation. And when he fled during the Great Migration, he himself fathered many amazing children. And one of them went off to be drafted into the Korean War.
Yeah.
And again, as a Black man, he came home a hero. And like we talk about, didn't have that right to even vote, because this is before the civil rights movement. This is in 1950s. And so I just want to share, this is just so important that each of us kind of reflect on that, where this comes from, where our role is in this moment, and I guess whose legacy we carry with us and that responsibility. So I just appreciate you sharing. It's just wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, these are firsthand, stories that I experienced and that I knew, and how my dad would tell me, how he would come back even in uniform and he still was disrespected. And, but he maintained himself and got us where we needed to be. He just pushed through those struggles. They made a lot of sacrifice for us. Yeah. So I love that about your family as well.
Yeah, thank you to both of you for sharing that. I think it really just shows the gravity of why it's important to vote, and just to imagine the character test and the poll tax and being denied the right to vote 6 times. That's hard to imagine when today I feel like sometimes the right to vote can sometimes be taken for granted and be dismissed. So this, which leads me to my next question, and I think it also relates to Cousin Erin. I guess how has your experience as a service member informed your understanding of civic participation in protecting democracy? Which I know that's a big question, but I know you specifically had shared a story about him being part of was it Alabama Supreme Court lawsuit relating to this? Is that right, or is this a different?
It was the same thing about him being on that commission that went around the country, mostly the South. And I found this file because another girlfriend of mine, her family member went through the same thing in Louisiana. And we were like, oh my goodness, this is going to cost a lot trying to order this through some, narrow or whatever. And here it was on Hathy Trust, 363 pages of that whole testimony in Montgomery, Alabama. And University of Michigan had the actual files. So, I mean, it's just so much going on with that. And his two daughters are still living to this day. So they know a whole lot more than I do. But we just know that, my cousin Aaron, he was really threatened, but this still all led up to going up to President Eisenhower, who wanted this done. And eventually in 1968, President Johnson invited cousin Aaron to the White House. So, these small little things in this small county and Bullitt County in the southeast corner of Alabama, in the Black Belt, this is before, Dr. King probably, I don't know, but and his nephew, my cousin, he's a mayor now in Ohio. So we all know this. We talk about this every 2 years. Our family reunions are like over close to 400, sometimes over that, because he comes from that man that who really got all this started, which was my granddaddy Ike, who had 3 wives and he had 23 children. And that's why our family is so huge, because we were taught all these values very young with him being in the Masons, these mutual aid societies back then, right after slavery, building a church. Like, this is ingrained in us. Like, we can do this with our eyes closed, because no one comes to that reunion and you do not know which child of the 23 kids of his that you come through. And you have to give the women, his wives, because that third wife married him with 10 kids, had 13 of her own with him, and she treated none of those 10 kids, which is one of my grandmothers, my great grandmother, and she treated them all equally. That's how we have come far from slavery till today, is because of those 3 women. The 2 passed away. He was a widow twice, but that third wife, we all call her Grandma Berta, she's the one that kept this going, and that is actually, cousin Aaron's grandmother, his third wife, because his mother was the child of her and granddaddy Ike. So this isn't far off history, but you can still see how even from Reconstruction, how this went down with us. Right. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's not something, freedom is not automatic, democracy is not self-sustaining. It's got to be protected, practiced, and passed on. And I just still keep saying, going back to what Mrs. Coretta Scott King used to say, that resonates with me every year, every time I just think about this, is freedom is never really won, right? You earn it. And with it, you win it in every generation. So even though our parents fought after slavery, during Reconstruction, Jim Crow, my dad battled that through the 60s, because he's a 22-year-old man during this time period. They all have took the mantle and ran with that. So as I get older now, I know what that means, and what it looks like, and I just try to actively practice that now.
That's right. Freedom is not won, freedom is earned.
Right. In every generation, we can't sit back on, our laurels about all of that. It teaches you a lot about rights and responsibilities. They go together. And voting, is one of the the clearest expressions of that responsibility, right? These are ordinary people that can take part in shaping the nation that we all share. So it's not about the work of soldiers or lawmakers or institutions. It belongs to citizens too. It belongs to the people.
Yes. And I think what your story shows us, and what Brandy's family lineage shows us too, is that this military service and the civic duty, they go hand in hand in so many ways.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for that. So I guess I know we covered the whole span of over a century, and over across the world. Were there any other stories that we didn't get to cover that you wanted to speak to? No, it's an open-ended question, but I wanted to make sure that we covered the most important ones. Sunny?
Yeah, I kind of like I kind of did a lot on my African American history, but I still, when it comes to my patriot, I was really at a I don't know. I had mixed emotions about that when I first found out. And I didn't like know him and I was like, okay. But over time I understood him and I get it now. And our common bond is that we both served for this
Mm,
country. Because in the beginning I couldn't find anything in common with him, but all along it was there. I just wasn't there yet. I didn't see it and I didn't get it, but now I get it, after being in the Daughters of the American Revolution for a while. But in the beginning, that was hard to reconcile because I kept going over that, he had all these rights, but the African American side of me was suffering from the beginning. So
mm,
yeah, because even
yes.
if you were free or you were a free person of color back then, I still think that even though you might have had certain rights, they still could have been snatched back at any time. You weren't really
Mm,
free. We love to pronounce that a lot, but were they really, really free? Even
yeah,
though they were?
that's right.
Like,
I mean, you said they
yeah,
went out they were willing to defend this nation, the democracy, but they were not afforded nearly the full benefits of a citizen or the dignity of being a human being.
right, right.
And so you talked about also America's unfinished work. This leads me to the closing question, which is, what would you want people, particularly young or first-time voters, to understand about why the right to vote is worth showing up for?
Okay. I know my kids are going to tickle me about this one, because I raised kids that are y'all age, and then I have my grandbaby. Like I said, she just turned 18 and she's registered to vote, and I'm always using them as an example because I'm kind of like the auntie at this point, especially on this panel. But I just want them to understand that their vote is not small, right? They know it's a responsibility, so we don't really have to enforce that. Like, they know this. Um, because I think I had two good beautiful journeys with my sons, teaching them in their teens and into their adulthood, and just having all these healthy debates and keeping them inspired and engaged over the years. And even if it wasn't my kids, sometimes I remember over the years they might be coming in with their friends and stuff, and I'll be bringing up things and just to get a gauge of what they're all doing, or with all of this voting and everything, or just being civically minded. So I feel like, this carries a weight of generations behind us, like, especially for me. Um, this voting is just tied to a long struggle that, it runs from Reconstruction, like you all said, to the Freedmen's Bureau and the cruelty of Jim Crow, through all these poll taxes, literacy tests, intimidation and threats, and just all the way with those hard fought gains that we even got through the Voting Rights Act. So when I say voting is worth showing up for, I mean it's worth it, because people really did pay the price for that. A lot of people were denied and humiliated and threatened, like my cousin Aaron. And a lot of people, we say this over and over again, but we'll have to keep repeating it until you know that people have suffered and died with the cost of their lives, that we keep on trying all the time. And don't underestimate your first vote, because you don't have to know everything. You just learn what you can, ask questions, register, show up, and participate, because your voice matters now, not someday or next week or down the line. You have to be part of this story, because you're not just, oh, that word aggravates me. You're not just a future, you're citizens like right now. Like, you deserve to understand that voting is, one way, one step in this nation as being a participant and not just observing. Someone really did pay the price for you not to just sit this out. And I hope he's my cousin. He's from Pike County, Alabama, where my granddaddy Ike was enslaved. Congressman John Lewis, what does he tell us? Get in good trouble. You need to get in good trouble. So, recognize your family's story, your own history, your own story, and see that long road of American citizenship. And just try to remember why these voting rights acts and everything else in here matters. Because, I have this sense that why are they such in an uproar? Why is everybody or some people or this or that so worried about your voting, trying to make it harder for you? You don't have to make it hard. Start at your local level. Start there. Start with your organizations that you like. Boys and Girls Club, or I don't know all these things now because I'm granny at this point, but I know when I was younger, how I would hear about all these things. And like I said, sometimes it would be the women in my family, go to someone you trust, but get in good trouble. Get in good trouble.
Yes. Get in good trouble. I know we use that a lot here too. Thank you for that. And I know one other way to participate in democracy is to get involved in our voting ambassador program, which I'll talk about shortly. But first, I wanted to just say thank you so much, Ms. Lewis, for sharing your story, for sharing your inspiring words. Like you said, freedom is not won, it is earned. Brandy, did you want to add anything to that?
I too just wanted to say thank you so much, Ms. Lewis, for sharing with us. And there's so many points that you've made, but we always love good trouble here at SFI for sure. And I love how you mentioned like you are already involved. You as a young person, like you aren't just the future. You're like we were saying, it's current, and so organize and get your friends engaged and read up and study your history for that, and that hope and empowerment we all need at this moment. I love like reading our history as our country. So again, thank you so much, everyone. And I do hope to see you all at our voter ambassador program. Thank you, Maria, for closing us out.
Thank you. Thank you, Brandy. Thank you, Ms. Lewis.
Thank you, Maria. You guys have been so sweet, and I'm proud of you and what you all have accomplished here and what you're doing. And this is what we need. So,
yes. And so with that, I know we talked about America's unfinished work, and one way we can continue that work is through the voting ambassador program. So for this last portion, I am going to talk about what the voting ambassador program is, what it entails, and how to get involved. Okay, if you are new and you haven't already seen all of our posts about what the voting ambassador program is, essentially, a voting ambassador is a trusted member in any military community in the world who volunteers to help people around them navigate voting. Ms. Lewis talked about the challenges of voting that spanned over the history of American history. And we're seeing a lot of the same challenges today as a military family who's trying to vote, whether that's trying to make sure that your absentee ballot is counted or navigating the registering process. There are many challenges, and there's a reason why military-connected voters have a 27% lower turnout rate than our civilian counterparts. So a voting ambassador essentially becomes the go-to person in your network. It's the friend that people call when they're not sure if they're still registered, or they don't know how to vote absentee from overseas. Or in my personal situation that had happened in years past, is I had just PCS and I didn't know where to start. So voting can get very complicated because it's thrown in the midst of all the different factors and realities that we have to deal with as military families. We move every year. We might be registered to vote in one state. We might get orders to go to another state, and then suddenly we just don't know what to do with that. So That's all that we do as voting ambassadors, is to make sure that we are that trusted person in our community to help people navigate that voting process. And the voting ambassadors really aim, and our goal this year is to close that gap. We talked about the voting voters and military connected voters showing up at 27% less than our civilian counterparts. And we're here this year aiming to close that gap. We want to equip you, hopefully a potential voting ambassador, with the resources, the knowledge, and the confidence to help your community get registered and get out to vote wherever you all are in the world. So I'll just make this clear, if it hasn't already been obvious enough, this program is nonpartisan. So we're not here to tell you or tell anyone how to vote or who to vote for. We do not support any candidate or political party. Instead, we want to make sure that you know your rights and that you can claim them, as we talked about from the Richard Bailey book. So know your right to vote and how to claim them. Essentially, what this looks like is, if you are a member of a military community, whether that is a spouse or a service member yourself, or a veteran, or a parent, or a child, or if you just are passionate about military communities, this program is for you. You can just come out, reach out. So what we'll do here is we'll drop the link to register to be a voting ambassador in this year. And then from there, you'll be in contact with, or be connected to a group of voting ambassadors that span the world. We have folks in Okinawa, to the UK, to Australia, to Spain, to Hawaii, and across the states, who all care about this purpose. And you'll be connected with that organization and that group of people who are passionate about getting people to participate in democracy. So with that, how do you sign up? If you're feeling that pull and you have this anxious feeling about watching the news in the last few weeks, and don't know where to put that energy, one place to do that is to join the Voting Ambassador Program. That's what I did. What you can do is head to the Secure Families Initiative website, and the link will be available for that, and then sign up to be a voting ambassador this year. We'll have that. And then I will say, in addition to being connected to other folks and also having a lot of resources and connections to those who really care about this issue and experts as well, we will give you a series of, not really series, but a swag bag, essentially, is the colloquial way we talk about it. You will get some QR codes that'll take you directly to the federal postcard application website. So there's this, and then a whole bunch of fun stickers to share if you're passionate about this work and show that voting is important to you. And so here, you can wrap this on your water bottle or your notebook, and then you'll also get a t-shirt that talks about how we get this work done. We sip, vote, and then we repeat. So with that in mind, register to vote. I wanted to say, or register to vote, and definitely if you want to take one step further, join us as a voting ambassador. Okay, I think that's all that we have. Thank you all for being here. If you have any questions, please drop them in the comments, and we will make sure to follow up afterwards. Let's get out there. Let's vote. Thank you.